There's a moment in every person's life when they come face to face with a truth they've been running from. Mine arrived on an unremarkable evening, the kind that passes without ceremony until you realize it's changed everything. For 18 months, I'd been building a life with Marcus. He was everything anyone could ask for in a partner: thoughtful, steady, the type who'd leave notes on the bathroom mirror and always knew when I needed space. My mother adored him. My friends called me lucky. And I wasn't I? He represented security in a world that rarely offers it. Yet beneath the surface of our comfortable routine, I felt something missing. Like trying to recall a melody you've never quite heard. Then there was Jordan, Marcus's closest friend since college. Jordan didn't command attention the way Marcus did. He moved through spaces differently, quieter, more deliberate. There was an intensity to him, something unspoken that made you lean in closer without realizing it. When he entered a room, conversations didn't stop, but they shifted, pulled slightly toward his gravity. Our first real look at each other wasn't casual. It lasted just seconds, but those seconds felt like uncovering something I'd kept hidden even from myself. I brushed it off as nothing, the way you do when facing something you're not ready to acknowledge. But denial only works for so long. Over the following weeks, every gathering became electric with tension. The way Jordan's gaze would find mine across crowded rooms. How his laugh changed pitch when I spoke. The careful distance he maintained, as if proximity itself was dangerous. And perhaps I was guilty too, of watching him when I shouldn't, of noticing details I had no business noticing. It came to a head on an ordinary Friday night. Marcus, Jordan, and I were at my apartment. Takeout containers littered the coffee table, some comedy playing on the television. Then Marcus's phone buzzed. An emergency at the office. He grabbed his jacket with an apologetic smile. "Keep her company," he told Jordan, ruffling his hair like they were still college roommates. "I'll be back before you know it." If only he'd understood what an hour could destroy. The door closed. The apartment fell into a different kind of silence. Heavy, expectant. Jordan sat at one end of the couch, scrolling through his phone with forced casualness. I pretended to care about the show, acutely aware of every breath, every shift of weight. "I'll get us something to drink," I announced, needing to escape the pressure building between us. In the kitchen, my hands trembled as I filled the kettle. I heard him approach before I saw him, footsteps slow and purposeful. The air changed. I felt his presence like a physical thing pulling me toward him. Then I dropped the mug. Water splashed across the counter, scalding my palm. I inhaled sharply. "Let me see." His voice was low, closer than I'd expected. He caught my wrist, his fingers cool against my burning skin. That touch was electric, deliberate. Time seemed to slow. I could feel my pulse hammering where his thumb rested. I should have stepped away. Instead, I looked up. His eyes held mine, and in that moment, every unspoken thing between us crystallized. All the wanting, all the resistance, all the impossible questions we'd been avoiding. He moved closer, giving me every opportunity to stop this. His hand found my waist, hesitant, waiting for permission I knew I'd give. When his breath touched my neck, the rest of the world dissolved. What happened next wasn't planned or logical. It was primal and honest in a way that made everything else in my life feel rehearsed. We didn't cross every line that night, but we crossed the one that mattered most, the boundary between loyalty and longing. By the time Marcus returned, we'd composed ourselves. We smiled, we laughed, we pretended. But something fundamental had shifted, and we both knew it. The next morning brought no messages, no acknowledgement. But his touch remained, an imprint I couldn't wash away. I still cared for Marcus, at least I told myself I did. But I'd begun to understand that love could become habit, something you perform rather than feel. What I felt for Jordan wasn't comfortable. It was chaos, and some destructive part of me craved it. Weeks passed in careful avoidance. We didn't discuss what had happened, but silence speaks its own language, and ours screamed. Every accidental brush of hands when passing dishes, every loaded glance, they were storms barely contained beneath civilized surfaces. Guilt arrived in quiet moments. Guilt for the man who trusted me completely. Guilt for wanting what I had no right to want. But guilt and desire don't cancel each other out. They coexist, feeding on each other like parasites. Marcus invited Jordan over again. We sat in the living room, the three of us, maintaining the fiction. Marcus told some story from work, laughing at his own punchlines. I smiled on cue. Across the room, Jordan's eyes met mine for just an instant, and every buried truth surged back to the surface. Later, after Marcus had gone to sleep, I stood by the window, unable to rest. City lights blinked in the darkness, blurred through my reflection. I thought about how things can appear peaceful from a distance even when they're collapsing. A floorboard creaked behind me. Jordan stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. Face shadowed. "This has to stop," he said finally. Voice rough with something between regret and hunger. "I know," I whispered, though knowing and stopping are entirely different things. He took a step forward. "Then why does it feel impossible to walk away?" I turned to face him. Maybe because we were never supposed to. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then it wasn't silence anymore. The space between us vanished. His hand cradled my face, thumb tracing my jaw. And this time there was no hesitation. The kiss was desperate, consuming, the kind that changes everything. When it ended, I was trembling. Not from fear, but from the realization that I'd crossed into territory I couldn't escape from. We didn't speak after that night. Not the next day, not the week after. Marcus noticed the distance growing between us and asked if something was wrong. I lied smoothly, the way you do when the truth would destroy everything. Jordan began avoiding me entirely. I told myself it was for the best, that time would heal this. But it didn't heal. It just transformed, longing shifting into loss. Every time I saw him, another piece of me broke. Months passed. Marcus proposed. I said yes, not from joy, but from exhaustion. I wanted peace, even if it was built on dishonesty. I chose comfort over fire, silence over storms. Jordan attended the engagement party, standing across the room with a drink in his hand, playing his part perfectly. When our eyes met, everything I'd tried to bury resurfaced. The dropped mug, the touch, the kiss, the wordless understanding that we were never meant to let go. He smiled politely, the way acquaintances do. I smiled back. That was our final conversation, a silent exchange of everything we'd never say aloud. Years have passed now. When I think back, it isn't Marcus's vows or our wedding day that echoes in my memory. It's the silence between Jordan and me, the kind that said everything words couldn't. People speak of love as if it's a choice, something that bends to reason or morality. But I've learned that sometimes love doesn't ask permission. It arrives, it consumes, and when it leaves, it takes pieces of you that you'll never get back. I stayed with Marcus. We built a life that looks right from every angle. We have a home in the suburbs now, routines that run like clockwork, friends who tell us we're goals. But late at night, when the world stops demanding performances, I remember that forbidden moment when I saw who I truly was. Beneath all the pretending, and sometimes, more often than I'd admit, I wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to choose the chaos instead of the comfort. If I'd let myself fall into that storm instead of running toward shelter. The truth is, I made my choice. I chose the life that made sense, the path that hurt fewer people, the love that was easier to explain. And most days, that's enough. But every now and then, when I catch my reflection in an unexpected mirror or hear a song that sounds like regret, I remember what it felt like to be truly alive. Even if it was just for a moment, that moment with Jordan, it haunts me. Not because I regret what happened, but because I regret what didn't. The conversations we never had, the life we never explored, the person I might have become if I'd been brave enough to choose authentically instead of safely. Marcus is a good man. He deserves better than someone who's always partially elsewhere, but he doesn't know to ask for it. And maybe that's its own kind of betrayal, staying when half your heart lives in a memory. I saw Jordan one last time, 3 years after the wedding. A chance encounter at a coffee shop downtown. We stood there in line, two strangers who once knew each other's breath. He ordered black coffee. I ordered tea. We nodded politely and went our separate ways. But as I walked to my car, I felt that old pull, that magnetic force that had once threatened to upend everything. And I wondered if he felt it too, if he carried the same ghost I did, the echo of what we'd almost become. They say every woman carries a secret truth. Mine is this. I chose safety over passion, and I've spent every day since trying to convince myself it was the right choice. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't, but it was mine.